officially welcome everyone and get started with our meeting this evening. Welcome to our May 14th Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group meeting. I'm very excited to share that this meeting is part of our Election Ready, our Empowerment Congress Election Ready series. And we have some great guests with us tonight, including one of our EC co-chairs and colleagues, Mr. Vincent Harris. So, as we start this evening, I'd love to direct everybody's attention to the agenda. It's shared within the chat. We have a lot of exciting things to cover this evening, and so we'd like to encourage everyone to share their introduction in the chat, please. And with that, I'd like to share a brief recap of our last meeting, which was on April 23rd, in which we had a very special Days of Dialogue. Institute for Nonviolence Los Angeles Days of Dialogue joined us and hosted a wonderful dialogue on homelessness, a community dialogue on homelessness. We will continue to periodically host dialogues. With that, I would like to get started on our topic for this evening of Election Ready. And to introduce us to that and kick us off, I would like to pass it off to our founder, Supervisor MRT. May I pass it off to you, Supervisor?
You may indeed. Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome to everyone. We're delighted that you are here. The topic of tonight's working group meeting is self-explanatory. We believe that homelessness overlaps and intersects with a range of policy issues, be it public safety, be it land use, be it health, and the list moves well beyond that. And to the extent that that is the case, we thought we'd seize the opportunity to tee up that which we anticipate being in front of us on June 2nd, potentially, and then again on November 3rd. And it is our belief that we need to stay the course in terms of our attention and our learning, as well as our advocacy around the issue of homelessness, the issue of housing insecurity, and advancing a perspective that honors the dignity and worth of all people. So we're delighted that all of you are here. We welcome those who are here for the first time, and we trust that it will not be the last. Shout out to our presenters, the Reverend Seth Pickens and the Honorable Vincent Harris. The additional speakers and presenters will be acknowledged by our co-chair. Back to you, Rhea.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. Yes, we keep pressing on addressing the crisis of homelessness, and it's crucial. So, with that, I would like to pass it off to introduce a very special EC colleague of ours, Supervisor, Mr. Vincent Meredith Harris. Vincent is going to share with us regarding our governor's poll. Updates on candidates' positions on homelessness. So thank you for joining us, Vincent. And I love what your shirt says and the message it has. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Rhea. Really, it is a pleasure to be here this evening. I just want to underscore the importance of what it is that we are doing. The Empowerment Congress firmly believes that we need to educate, engage, and empower those who adhere to the notion of civic engagement, particularly for the purpose of advancing socially responsible and socially responsive efforts to make our community better. And elections are critical to that effort. Elections are the indispensable tool of civic engagement. And without the vote, our ability to secure all of the other rights is placed in jeopardy. It is without the vote that it is a challenge to fully engage in the obligations and responsibilities of citizenship in a representative republic, such as the one in which we currently live. Uh, if voting were not important, then there wouldn't be the type of effort that we see being advanced all around the country currently to deny certain people the right to exercise the franchise in a way that permits them to at least have a chance to vote for the candidates of their choice. And if you can't vote for the candidate of your choice, then it is a real challenge to keep candidates, elected officials, and the public officials that they frequently appoint accountable to our interests. And so it really is a pleasure to be here this evening because the Empowerment Congress has organized a homelessness working group because we recognize that homelessness, housing affordability, and housing insecurity are critical intersectional issues that impact the quality of life and standard of living
You
of
see how
everyone
quickly
on
she
this
responds,
call.
number one. And then number two, you notice that when I really made it clear what I'm
Hello,
talking
thank you. I was on a roll. I know that was you, MRT. That's all right. Um, so what I want to do
I try not
first,
to be so obvious, but I'm busted.
what I
help
want to
me,
do,
help me out, Bob Gay. Help me out.
what I want to do first in the next minute or so is let you know that the Government Reform and Accountability Working Group meeting met last week, and we heard a fantastic presentation by Dr. Shakari Byerly, who is the director of research and polls for a polling firm entitled Eviderus. Eviderus has been retained by the California Democratic Party to engage in a series of polls of all of the major candidates, including the Republican ones, that they have been tracking since around, I think, February is when their first poll was initiated. And they are surveying the changing preferences of likely voters over the course of the campaign. And we heard from her, and Shikari did a very, very deep dive into the tabs of the poll, that is, the breakouts of different demographic segments of those who are polled to determine what trends were developing among the various segments of the population that was being polled. And it was very, very revealing and insightful. We had a fully engaged group of individuals who were able to hear firsthand from an expert, from a pollster, about what the methodology is that is used in order to track the policy preferences of the folks who are being polled. It was important, she said, for us to remember that polls are merely snapshots in time. They're reflective of the preferences of the sample of the electorate that the pollsters organize and survey to ascertain how they are feeling about candidates, who their preferences are, how they may be leaning, and what movement has been occurring. So, in addition to the fact that it's a snapshot in time, she also revealed that the number of the overall quantity of undecided voters is uh, getting smaller and smaller the closer we get to election day. And people are only now beginning to sort of tune in and understand what's going on. Folks are beginning to look at the various debates that are occurring. They've been able to view different news channels as they interview candidates on the same questions so that we can get a sense of where they fall or where they stand on different issues. This evening, I just want to take a couple of minutes to review the most recent statewide poll that was released just a couple of days ago by Emerson College and what that survey is suggesting about where people currently stand. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thanks.
Great. So in the poll that was released 2 days ago, or actually yesterday, um, you begin to see that it seems to validate what appears to have been happening when we looked at the tracking poll results last week, that Javier Becerra is gaining significant momentum and traction in the polls. This one has him at about 19%. The poll that we heard last week, I think, had him at, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 18%. Both folks who were actually going to vote for him at that time or who were leaning toward voting for him. He was virtually in a dead heat with Steve Hilton, who had the same number at about 18%. Tom Steyer was next, and Chad Bianca was next. So uh, this poll tends to validate what appeared to be happening in the tracking polls. I want to say one other thing that's important. Prior to Eric Swalwell's departure from the campaign, Javier Becerra was polling at under 4%. And you may recall the controversy that swirled around a candidate debate that was being hosted by the University of Southern California, Reverend Pickens. The University of Southern California uh, had made a determination that, based on the methodology that they were employing about who should be on that stage, denied Javier Becerra that seat because at the time he was polling under the threshold that they had determined was required in order to get uh, 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 to be able to stand at a podium and participate in that debate. So the point is twofold. Elections are dynamic, and so is the polling. So just because you see somebody ahead now doesn't mean that a circumstance may occur that could lead a candidate to either increase their standing in the preferences of those who are surveyed in polls or may decrease in the standing. Originally, at the very beginning of the campaign, it was thought that Katie Porter had the best shot of running. At the beginning of the campaign last fall, before Tom Steyer um, could expend the resources that he did in order to heighten his name recognition, he was polling at under 2 or 3%. So, 2 points again. Elections are dynamic, and so is polling. Polling is simply a snapshot in time about what appears to be happening at the particular moment that a pollster contacts a prospective voter. So that's the information that I wanted to share. You can see in this table how over time the dynamism of the uh, standing of candidates is reflected. Notice Becerra in September of 2025 I should say in December. I can't look at can't see the colors quite right. I guess it was actually March of 2026. He was at 3%, and now he's at 19. And there you can see sort of what's going on. Bianco appears to have peaked and may be losing traction, as is Porter, based on these surveys. I'm going to put the link to this report from Emerson College in the chat for people to take a look at their leisure. I just wanted to help open up the meeting by discussing this poll and encouraging those of you who are interested in continuing your effort to inform yourself before you cast your ballot to tune in to the Empowerment Congress at our election ready meetings. Our next election ready meeting is going to be this coming Tuesday at May the 19th during our Government Reform and Accountability Working Group meeting. And I'll put the link to that registration in the chat as well over the course of our meeting. The last thing I want to say in conclusion is already in the chat. If you are still undecided, that's okay. We still have a little bit of time before we need to get our ballots in. There are multiple ways in Los Angeles County for people to vote. They can bring their mail-in ballot to the poll and just drop it in a drop box. They can find drop boxes by looking at some of the links in the chat. Those drop boxes are now open, so folks can, at their leisure, bring their ballot to the poll. You can go to a polling station, a vote center, as they begin to open in the next week or so to cast your ballot in person if you prefer to do that. You can also bring a completed ballot to the vote center and just drop it in the box. For people who need to register to vote, I think the voter registration deadline is approaching. It's around May the 18th or so. I know that I put the link or the information in the chat. If you are unregistered to vote, you may still cast a provisional ballot on election day. It won't be counted on election day because they'll want to verify that you haven't already cast a ballot elsewhere. But it will be counted, and it will be counted toward the ultimate conclusion of the election once all of the ballots are certified by election administrators. With that, I will turn the mic over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Vincent. It is always such a privilege and pleasure to have fellow EC co-chairs join our homelessness working group. And I'd like to especially thank you because you always lay out all of the process and particulars with such clarity. So, what you shared in the chat regarding the vote centers and making a plan to vote, we copied that back into the chat, so it is most recently there as well. And again, thank you so much for sharing on that. I really like what you said that elections are dynamic and so are polls. So Data are definitely important and must be taken into account as we make our plan to vote, as we understand our ballots and dig into again how homelessness is on the ballot. Our next speaker is Dr. Seth Pickens, and Dr. Seth is definitely versed with data. Dr. Seth has previously joined us at our EC Homelessness Working Group, and I'd like to quickly recap a little bit more about Dr. Seth. He is the managing director at USC's Homelessness Policy Research Institute, and has as he describes, a holistic approach to the prevention of chronic homelessness. Before HPRI, Dr. Seth's experience is very well versed in data and mental health, homeless services, and spiritual health. So, with that, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Seth Pickens to help us understand better how homelessness is on the ballot.
All right,
Thank you for
thank
joining us.
you very much. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
thanks.
You're looking at me here, I'm looking at you here, and you look real good. So if I'm looking here, I'm not looking away. All right. But thank you very much, and thank you, Brother Harris. And, I wasn't a part of that debate at all, that gubernatorial debate. I probably would have let, Mr. Becerra have his voice heard, though. So, don't blame me,
Not blaming you.
I know. I know.
I went to UCLA.
Oh, okay. See, I know. See, all right.
That
Yeah, all right. I
that was
knew it was something. I knew it
Seth,
was something.
that was a real issue. There was nothing more to it than that.
Yeah. All right, we gang banging here on a Thursday evening.
There you go.
All right. And so no, but I truly appreciate that presentation, very enlightening and some good insights and just some good practical things as well. And Rhea asked me to speak on, maybe get a little bit deeper into what homelessness is looking like on the ballot. And, you want to have your own analysis, you want to have your own kind of discernment, decision making around anyone or anything you're voting for, of course. That said, I could maybe shed just my analysis, my perspective. So I see this election. Now we know that homelessness is really becoming sort of the biggest issue if it wasn't already. And I'll kind of get into some specific races, but the mayoral race is essentially, a referendum on, Mayor Bass's homelessness approach, and to a lot of people. And so, of course, time will tell. So I'm going to get into a few races and a few things, but I think what they all have in common is a dichotomy, a decision making. On the one side, people deserve dignity. There is systemic inequality. We must double down on what's working to meet racial economic justice. There's an affordability crisis. We got to help people. On the other side is we need civic order. We need safety. We need institutional accountability for all the billions that have been spent. And so these two are in tension, but what they're both asking is, how much homelessness will we tolerate and what are we going to do about it, essentially? And I'm using that term homelessness very broadly, and as I know you understand that. So, of course, we have these bigger events coming, World Cup, Olympics. That you could just look back at the last 10 Olympics. It's one-way bus tickets, it's imprisonment, it is sweeping it under the rug for the sake of that global spectacle. But then that does leave something, a very important open question about, what that actually means for housing security, for the affordability crisis, for the housing supply crunch that we're experiencing right now. And I think most Angelenos have some of that. Okay, man, we got to just clean it up. We got to do better. We don't have to live like this. Along with this is government's responsibility. We got to find what works. We have to emphasize healthcare has been a huge part of it as well, which takes me to Measure ER. So specifically to talk about the ballot, Measure ER is following up on Measure A. It's not specifically homelessness, but it is healthcare and county services, which immediately overlaps with unhoused populations. We're talking Medi-Cal, public hospitals, community clinics, street medicine, addiction treatment. So all that is overlapping with homelessness. Measure ER, let me just make sure I get this right. It's a temporary 0.5% increase in the county sales tax. So on the ballot in June, Measure ER. It's a 5-year 0.5% county sales tax increase. And this is to actually backfill some of what was experienced with the recent federal Medi-Cal support cuts. So we're raising our own, a vote for yes is raising our sales tax another 0.5% to support, as I said, community hospitals, emergency services. And this would raise us from 9.75% to 10.25% for 5 years. Now, in 5 years, this will probably be extended, just the way that things go. So again, okay, it's bad enough that I will tax myself another 0.5% on the sales tax versus, wait a minute, we already had Measure A, we had HHH, we had H, we had Measure A, we had care courts, we had Proposition 1. It's been billions across the city, county, and state, and the problem is getting worse. Why in this time would I tax myself even another penny for this work? So that's really, I think where you land on that in any particular issue, in any particular race, is kind of the dividing line. The trust, just from my perspective, seems to be at a low. Now, without this money, that's the argument, things will get worse. But no, we've already given, on this. And Catherine Barger is one, to paraphrase her on this issue, the sales tax is too damn high. All right. Then you have Holly Mitchell, others. MLK Hospital, a lot of labor unions and others are saying, it'll be worse if we don't do this. So, vote your conscience, vote your mind on that one. That there, the model has been, and I know the supervisor could speak to this a lot better than I could, but essentially identify the problem, raise the revenue, build the program is the model. But now people really are asking more and more, where did the billions go? Who's really truly accountable? What are the outcomes? And, those are some fair questions, tough questions. So that's Measure ER. Moving into the mayor's race, and again, this is just kind of my snapshot. It's not, as he spoke, Vincent, about polling. And so no endorsements here, but just kind of give you how homelessness is on the ballot. As I said, the mayoral race is essentially a referendum on homelessness policy. So we have Mayor Bass, who, as I understand, is leading. There have been some victories with Inside Safe with these motel placements as far as homelessness. There has been very robust coordinated outreach. Encampment resolution, not just sweeping it under the rug, but tying it tying encampment resolution to services has been big, has been good, and purported claims of reductions in street homelessness. So that's good. Some of her critics, again, they're falling on this dichotomy. So Karen Bass is clearly saying, okay, what we're doing is working. We got to kind of keep it moving here. We're doing something. her critics are saying it's too expensive, it's too slow. And then there was some recent articles and things and evidence that a lot of people who get off the street are returning to the street, but it's costing a lot of money in the meantime for people to end up, right back where they started. And sometimes worse off, and sometimes better too. But again, this is complicated stuff. So we know of Mayor Bass just being here the last 4 years. Nithya Raman, councilwoman, is actually looking for stronger, as I understand it, looking for stronger structural and progressive progress. Having voucher programs, she's calling for voucher programs to be expanded, for housing production to be expanded, and less reliance on the hotels, which that's been Karen Bass's signature thing. But the hotels get expensive. I saw something that said it could be as much as $4,000 to $14,000 a month per homeless person. And so $14,000 a month, to house one homeless person without even necessarily all the services, it's valiant effort. That's a lot of money to spend on, one person. And that's the type of money that's going out through the city with this. So there's critique. Nithya Raman wants to pull away from that and kind of get into the infrastructure more. That's my take on it. She's saying that we're spending a lot on kind of a reactive response. People on the streets, put them in hotels, versus investing that money in a durable housing infrastructure. So her critics are, they're saying that one, it's going to cost too much. Two, there's not enough urgency around encampments. So that's Karen Bass, Nithya Raman. Spencer Pratt is kind of in that populist lane, in that law and order lane. He is promising aggressive encampment clearing. Look, I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to save money. Again, are we going to give more billions, or are we going to just clean it up and make it make sense? And you probably know part of his story that he's running. He blames Mayor Bass and others for burning his house down, and he's been very outspoken since then, critiquing her in particular and progressive governance in general. He would claim that he is compassionate, but that we need visible order. So I think most of you probably know this, but those are the big three with the mayoral race. The governor's race. And so with homelessness, LA is a national laboratory. And so we're here. This is the Homelessness Policy Research Institute. And USC is doing a lot, around homelessness, from the medical school, the dental school, the engineering school, architecture. There's research all up and down. There are student groups doing things. So LA is this, and a lot going on at UCLA too. There's some good things at UCLA too. I will admit that. Right. But so LA really is a laboratory. It's the epicenter of this issue. And so what we do, people are looking at it, not just in America, but really around the world in terms of different models, which brings us a step out to the California governor's race. Now, this has become volatile. I think, in a word, affordability is really what we're talking about. And so homelessness is obviously a big piece of that. But I think affordability is such a huge kind of driving point. There is no Gavin Newsom or Kamala Harris to really sweep away with this in this race. And so that's made it interesting, as Brother Harris shared in some of those polls. And no one's really, even as his poll was saying, over 20% at this point. But it's interesting. So, and of course, California is a top 2 jungle primary system. So you got I'll spend some time on maybe the big 3 or 4 candidates, but there's Tom Steyer, there's Javier Becerra, Villaraigosa's running, Katie Porter, Steve Hilton, Chad Bianco, but it's going to be the top two. They could both be Democrat, they could both be Republican, that go on from the June primary to the general election, because it doesn't look like anyone's getting 50 plus 1 in June for governor. We can start with Tom Steyer. Successful businessman, billionaire, positioning himself as a populist as far as affordability goes, positioning himself as a very competent manager and leader, and also as somewhat of an outsider to politics, which is refreshing in its own way. There's, always a certain kind of reputation that comes or assumption that comes with a billionaire. Can a billionaire champion affordability for the rest of us? Can he even understand the anxiety that people are feeling right now? And of course, that's filtering all the way down into questions of homelessness. His money has been helpful for sure. He's probably the biggest advertising voice in the race. And, maybe others have more that they could say specifically about what he will do about homelessness. I know there's a lot of approaches to affordability. There's kind of a pragmatism of looking at what's working and keeping it up and getting rid of what doesn't. So that's Tom Steyer. We mentioned Javier Becerra, who, of course, was Biden's Health and Human Services Secretary. Before that was California Attorney General. That large government perspective that I won't necessarily use the term establishment, but we know that when Eric Swalwell dropped out of the race, Javier Becerra kind of politically stepped into that stead in terms of a lot of those backers where they wanted to put their resources. So the biggest pro with Javier Becerra is that he is establishment and knows his way around Sacramento and Washington. The biggest con to Javier Becerra may be that he's establishment. So it just depends on where you land on that. Perhaps, and we'll see as more of this continues to flesh out. Katie Porter, who we mentioned also, educated suburban Democrats are really her bread and butter. She's known for prosecutorial intensity. And so what does that look like? And that's just all the way around. So prosecutorial intensity going against big business, right? Also prosecutorial intensity going against folks who fit certain profiles as well. So just all the way around, kind of, law and order and keeping communities, keeping decent communities safe, right? So she'll take from the rich, but is that the same as given to the poor? Might be, maybe folks could tease that out a little bit more. I don't know how much of a back and forth we want to have. The Republican who is showing a lot of, response so far, Steve Hilton, could be a wild card, Fox News personality. Kind of considered that MAGA candidate, and he's trying to move away from that, maybe, anti-bureaucratic, anti-Sacramento bureaucracy, technocracy, leaning into the frustration on homelessness a lot, as well as high prices, and just kind of an overall distrust in government. The poll that you showed had him, I think, in second place at this point. So
That's correct.
yeah, that's something to look out for. Even that a Republican is competitive in the conversation is saying a lot about overall frustration and sentiments. And so I don't think any of these candidates can take voters for granted or voting blocks or communities. So, yeah, I mean, all in all, I think when it comes to homelessness, everyone wants to see things look better. We want to see better outcomes. Um, you know, and that's complicated. We could talk more about that too. I have some thoughts about that as well. But overall, are we frustrated with what we've seen and we're looking for something new? Or, are we trusting what works and want to keep going forward with that? And whoever wins, they do still, of course, work for us. And, coalitions like this and others are going to be voices that matter in the weeks and months ahead. And so grateful to, be here and be a part of this work with you all. So hand it back to Rhea. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Seth. I really appreciate that. And I think there was a question in the chat that
Okay.
Vincent asked about recidivism and recidivist homelessness, and I would love to, ask that of you and then invite Supervisor as well, because I think both of you would have a really great perspective on this. And the question is, if they were as concerned about the recidivism of those who are incarcerated, has anyone seen a side-by-side comparison of respective costs?
Of
So.
homelessness recidivism versus prison recidivism, side by side,
Yes.
you're asking?
Yes.
I haven't seen that. We could kind of get some insights on that with a little digging. That's interesting. And then that opens up vis-a-vis homelessness, a conversation about prevention. Public avoidance cost is something that is big to look at. But the short answer is I have not seen that comparison.
Right. It seems to me there are parallels
Yeah.
between the two, and
Mhm.
just an interesting sort of
Mhm.
policy
Well, say
kind
a
of
little bit more what you
question.
mean by the parallels to Vincent. I'm not sure that I'm
Well,
following you.
well, uh, as you know, several years ago, there was a big push to reduce the recidivism of uh, formerly incarcerated individuals to avoid that sort of revolving door of incarceration, um, out, and then something happens and incarceration again. And there's a cost associated with that to the public. When you're in jail, you're being supervised 24/7 by people who don't earn uh, substantially less than minimum wage. Oftentimes, they're six-figure salaries who are observing the people who are incarcerated. So there's a significant cost there. And the return to prison, uh, when that happens, continues that cost. Would be interesting to compare what the public cost avoidance is of when it comes to addressing those who are homeless, particularly those who need supportive services. And so being able to put them side by side, I think, might provide a little bit of clarity. It seems like we're more willing as a society to incarcerate people, even nonviolent offenders, than we are to provide homeless services to an unemployed or underemployed individual who just can't afford a house.
Well, I think it would require a significant amount of teasing out of the data, but uh, it in part begins with the overlapping phenomenon of incarceration and homelessness. So, first up, then, is the extent to which Men's Central Jail ends up being a revolving door, Bishop, for homeless individuals. And if you measure that aspect of recidivism, it is hardly inconsequential. Um, Particularly, and it's explainable, particularly when people are released without ID and any real supports, they do recidivate. And the data is compelling in that regard. The cost associated with homelessness, not just the allocation of resources that Dr. Pickens references, is huge. That is, the costs that associate with lost purchasing power, lost earning power, all these are calculable um, considerations as well. Add to that the cost in terms of impacts on um, the safety net, emergency rooms, and so forth. There was a study done on homeless persons who were once described as frequent flyers because of the way in which they would use emergency services as not only a last resort, but their first call on services. So I think this is full of a range of ways that could be interesting in terms of teasing out the data. But let me hasten to make a couple of observations. The issue of homelessness, from a polling perspective, has defied and pretty much stumped surveyors and pollsters for the last decade. And the reason for that is that it has remained in number one and number two slot over that period of time. Um, and they continue to say there has been nothing that they've seen on the public policy plate that has sustained itself in terms of the intensity of voters in this matter, in this manner. So it is a top tier issue, uh, and is not going away. And that's why um, those candidates at the gubernatorial level can't get away from answering the question, what would you do to address the homeless crisis? And I don't know that I can say anybody nailed it. I think the range is from retrograde to enlightened. Um, you mentioned Tom Steyer as an example. He seems to be more personally struck by what happens to the individual um, as a result of being homeless, and how that very state of being causes the individual to deteriorate. And then you have more profound problems to which one must attend. I mean, I've heard him hammer that quite a lot. And I think it is a point that is often overlooked from the perspective of people thinking that these are individuals who are often or predictably drug addicted and or they are mentally ill, which overlooks the point that uh, you made earlier, Dr. Pickens, namely that economic insecurity drives homelessness and homelessness feeds these other maladies in terms of mental health issues, as well as, in some instances, substance use issues, alcoholism, and that data is abundantly clear. Um, I share the point of view that there's a lack of imagination emanating from the candidates in terms of what to really do and how to dive in. I think we would go to their um, websites and learn more about what their positions really are. And I would encourage that. I do want to conclude by saying that no single governor over the last half century um, and more has done as much to address the homeless crisis in the state of California as has Gavin Newsom. And I fear no contradiction in that connection. And yet, the crisis is still upon us. Um, but this governor has leaned in. Um, and it's not just the issue of home key, it's the allocation of resources and tried to experiment with creativity. I think this is a very complex issue. It's multifactorial, and I don't know that leaders are prepared to expend the kind of capital, intellectual, moral, financial to tackle this to the extent that it needs to be tackled so that it makes a material difference in the life of those who are homeless and those of us in the environment who are directly and or indirectly affected by homelessness. And so the extent to which it is caused by voters, and it's only because of voters. This is moved by voters, not by elected officials. They would have run to the hills rather than try to tackle this issue. But there was in Los Angeles practically a voter revolt in 2014, 15, 16 that said, this is just out of control. What are you all going to do about it? And that's when things began to move in Los Angeles. So it is high in the polls. It's low octane with respect to the imagination that's being brought to bear by the candidates, from retrograde to enlightened. Um, it hasn't forced its way into the prime slot. So I think the jury is out in terms of how the issue will really be taken up as a premier policy question in our state. We know the story in our city. We know that Mayor Bass spent a lot of capital dealing with the question of homelessness. And I would like to say, in large measure, has led with her heart on the matter. Uh, and I would want to argue that that's insufficient, but it can't be denied. The other point that's worth mentioning is I think there's a conspicuous absence of enough heart in the question of homelessness in the public policy making arena. It's more fiscally driven than it is in terms of the compassion and the humanity that needs to be displayed in order for us to, and the sacrifice and the reprioritization that has to happen in order for us to make good on this uh, crisis that continues to expand before our very eyes. Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Supervisor and Mr. Harris. And I think Dr. Pickens had to jump off for 5 minutes and is going to jump back on, but thank you to him as well. I think before we segue into a last piece, I do have a quick question though. how are some ways, how do we do our best due diligence to understand each of the candidates' perspectives on homelessness as we seek to understand homelessness on the ballot? Because this is one of the first elections in a long time, I think, where we don't have a particular proposition or measure regarding homelessness, but yet within so many races, homelessness is impacted, you know? So what is the best way for us to stay educated, engaged, and really informed as we finalize our voting plans?
Scrub their website. uh, in terms of a real drill down, develop the appropriate questions that we know of our own experience, what we think has worked and what hasn't worked. And they ask the question, are they just paying lip service to the question, or is there a serious drill down in terms of how to address the crisis?
Mm,
Um, and I think we need to measure how much willingness there is to lean in. Now, some may be discouraged because, as I said, Newsom has leaned in a way that I think is reasonably irrefutable, and that's in the first and second term. Uh, but there will be those who would quickly say, and I don't mean from a partisan perspective, they would quickly say, well, what difference has it really made? And if in fact that can't be addressed unequivocally, it discourages policymakers, political aspirants, from really embracing this because they are in pursuit of what? Wins, WINS. So this is tough. Um, this is not for the faint of heart. Someone has to be willing to pick this up and put it on his or her back. And that's what I think we can say the mayor of the city of Los Angeles has sought to do. And what she ultimately has to show for it is uh, debatable, irrespective of the discussion about uh, this unprecedented uh, set of fires and so forth. Before that, the question is properly posed, what outcomes can be appointed to, pointed to. So there's a critique of inside safe and all the ancillary pieces. But I will hasten to make this comment. Part of the difficulty has been the disconnect between the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles. Absent show enough collaboration,
hmm
it's very hard to make this work. After all, the county is essentially uh, the overseer of the safety net,
hmm
and the issue of homelessness falls squarely in that domain. I mean, the city has responsibility for land use and namely the streets and so forth for its population, 400 square miles, and nearly 4 million people, between 3.5 and 4 million people. But beyond that, um, you have to ask the question, where is the hand in glove approach? And we do know that that broke down in connection with LASA.
Right.
And Bob, it was LASA that came forth in 1992, 93 under then Mayor Tom Bradley, and now it's being torn asunder. But everything has changed significantly since that time. Um, the phenomenon of homelessness in the ninth district then was qualitatively different than what it looks like now. So I just think, this is a very, very dynamic situation. If anybody thinks they figured it out, that's the first mistake. We got to keep studying. got to keep paying attention to it. We got to keep doing our advocacy. We need to continue to up our index in terms of compassion and compliance and be um, what I would say is creative in so doing. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Vincent keeps asking really great questions in the chat,
Yeah,
but
this is
before we get there.
it was a rhetorical question, not
Oh,
necessarily meant to be
okay.
answered.
Okay. So before we move to our next speaker, though, I see that Bishop Byron has his hand up. So I would like to open the floor to you, Bishop.
Yeah, I appreciate this great discussion. I appreciate Pastor Seth bringing the uh, various analytical studies of various groups and various stances according to different uh, political figures. My question is, and maybe MRT, you could kind of lean in on this because you spoke about, or someone spoke about the more granular data required to fully tease things apart. Because I think everyone's coming with their philosophical views and ideas and resources. But I'm reminded of an article that I read in 1989 by a sociologist by the name of Herbert Gaines. He talks about the poor pays all, and he talked about the need of the poor being a catalyst to capitalist society. And without the poor, there will be no gauge of how rich someone is, how highly educated they are, and who's going to do the dirty work. And so when we talk about, finding solutions towards homelessness, and like you said, MRT, it's very complex. I just wonder, how can we use data? Like LASA ran their stench, but even though it's dissolving, there's something good that we could still take away from that experience instead of just throwing the baby out with the bathwater to utilize what Mayor Bass is doing now. And so how do we take, the shift of things, the shift of programs, um, and utilize that data to say, the entire process didn't work, but segments of this worked. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's utilize some of the things that this program that's not existing anymore still was doing some things well. And it seems like, you know, when a program cease or dissolve, it seems like we just scratch it off the table altogether. But I think there's something we can take from every process to help us to contextualize the work so that we can bring key figures to the table and have these discussions of what worked, why did it work, what didn't work, and why didn't it work, so that we can kind of get a grip on the chaos, because I think it's just spinning. And like you said, it's spinning out of control with so much complexity that it is overwhelming when you think about all of the fears that's a part of this process.
May I do a quick response to that question that Bishop just posed?
I'm sorry, I couldn't see who asked
Oh,
that,
this
please.
is Bam. I've asked, can I do a quick response to the question that Bishop just posed?
Absolutely. I think 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Sure.
that'll be fine. So we have data that we just recently obtained, and that data is Inside Safe has spent over $300 million. 40% of the people are back on the street. Let's dissect and understand why the
Yes.
40% are back. That's something we can do very expeditiously. I'm done.
Hmm.
Bam.
Thank you. And man, that was amazing, Bam, with the timekeeping. Thank you so much. Um, Supervisor, you're muted. Oh, you're still muted, sir.
And that's one of the points that I was hoping to be lifted up regarding Vincent's question about recidivism, there is data uh, to be reviewed, and this is just one uh, example of Inside Safe, which came forth and caused the model to be questioned. There is a debate about the data, as is always the case, which causes me to go back to the first presentation that Vincent made on the matter of the poll. That came under attack, the Emerson poll, for a couple of reasons. The sample size was too small, it was 365 or so people, compared to the poll that Shikari did, which at Vitterus, which was 3+ times the size. There was also a critique about the oversampling or the disproportionate representation of two groups. One,
Get some more.
Latinos
Get some more.
Latinos compared to what's anticipated in terms of their turnout. And I don't know if it was also younger people. So there's going to need to be validation of the poll that came out in terms of Emerson, although I think it is correct to say that it's uh, reinforced by some other data, but most people think the jury is still out. It could flip in any direction, which at this point is pretty interesting that we're at this place in terms of how the gubernatorial race may land.
Thank you, Supervisor. I think that's a great segue into our final piece on data, really. And that is with one of our INVLA, our Institute for Nonviolence Los Angeles Days of Dialogue team members, Kim, and I'm sorry, Kim, I always butcher your last name, so please correct me again. Kim Decatrell.
You got it. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. We can
good.
hear you.
And yay, my microphone is working.
Yes, it's a bit soft, but we can hear you. And so, Kim, I wanted to invite you to share with us how you've been using AI to support in understanding candidates' positions on homelessness. So, if I may turn the floor to you to lead us through this, please.
I would be happy to show you what I've been playing with over here. Did I just share my screen?
Yes, you did.
Did it work?
Okay. Yes, it did.
So when we last spoke, Vincent said, can you take a look, can you show our group what you did with AI? Because I sent him sort of a sample of a flyer, an infographic about the candidates. And so I just wanted to take you through the steps that I used, because it literally took me 20 minutes. And then I'll show you what I've been doodling around with here as I'm listening to the conversation and the questions that are coming up, to see how those got answered in real time. So I'm in Claude. You can be in ChatGPT or whatever, but I'm in Claude at the moment. I'm not a advanced user. I'm a beginning user. I have some projects going here. That's something a little more involved than a chat. You might have chats, but then you have projects that might consist of multiple chats. And so if I scroll, everyone can see my job search that's happening at the moment. This is where we are. The first thing I created was based on a video link that was shared with us about one of the debates. And this is the prompt that I put in. Let me see if I can move. Create a one-pager at a glance reference sheet. Format it as a table with the names and parties of all candidates currently running for the office of California governor. Then include brief notes about each candidate's position on housing issues, including housing affordability, housing insecurity, and homelessness. Use the content of this YouTube video along with whatever relevant sources you discover, because I don't know what else to tell it to do more specifically. So what follows, you can see what the AI is thinking. You can see its thought process as it goes through. You can go through what it's capturing. And then it kind of ended with, this information might be outdated. If you want some reliable, up-to-date voting information, visit Turbo Vote by Democracy Works. So I said, okay, Claude, can you also use Turbo Vote by Democracy Works as a source for this document? And then Claude went and investigated some more and said, well, not really, because, and explained it to me. But then summarized, so there's a couple ways I can help depending on what you're after. It gives you some options of things you may not have thought of on your own necessarily, which direction would be most useful. I say, okay, disregard all of that. I didn't think it was going to be helpful right then. Instead, Claude, can you just add grid lines to this table? So I'm going to format what I have so far, and that will be our starting point. This will be what I share. So it shares a document here. If I click on it, it'll give you a preview on this side. This is what it came up with based on the debate as a primary source. It goes candidate by candidate, the party, housing and affordability, supply, homelessness, and then they gave Governor Newsom a grade themselves. This is how they're grading what Newsom has been doing so far. So you can look at that. And then I said, well, okay, brand it. Claude found some Empowerment Congress branding and applied that. Let me move this a little bit. I don't care right now. Explained to me what that was all about, came up with a new version. I said, okay, well, now make it a PDF that I can actually share, because I don't know how to get this webpage link out of Claude to share with other people. Okay, well, then it came up with a nice document that I can share with everyone in a minute. But I said, well, I don't know if this information is correct. I am not an expert on these matters. I want a Word document I can share so other people who know more than I do can edit it. They can review it and they can edit. So then it changed it to a Word document for me, explained to me what's in the document and ways I can share it with others. And I said, well, I don't know about these sources either. What is AI basing this information on? I want a list of all these sources I can share with a variety of people who might be able to vet them or know more about them. I said, please convert this reference, whatever, to something I can download, and done. This is what I got. So if I want to work with others and collaborate with others on, okay, which sources were utilized here, and it tells me, it indicates where and how much. Do we need to eliminate any of these? Are there sources we want to pull from that weren't included, etc.? So I thought that was pretty awesome. It also gave me other resources I can do a deep dive on issues and candidates using. The document itself, the comparison document, is here. I can download it. I can put it right into my Google Drive if I want. And that's what this one looks like.
That's awesome.
So and that happened very quickly, and I am A, not a savvy user, and B, not informed on these issues. So I think it was at least a great place for someone like me to get started. But before I move on to what happened just now during our conversation, are there questions or comments anybody would like to voice?
I think it's a helpful tool. Oh, yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Harris.
just wanted to
Yeah, Harris.
just wanted to share with the group that we thought, based on the experience in the Government Reform and Accountability Working Group meeting, where we did a similar thing using Google's AI, that we wanted to illustrate the power of artificial intelligence to inform us about the positions that candidates are taking based on the citations that Kim has solicited AI to identify as they put together the information, so that we don't have to trust them. We can go to their source material to vet the data further. We may not be able to do this on all of the issues that we are concerned about in the time that remains before the primary. However, in a general election, it may be useful, a very useful tool for identifying the positions that candidates have, not just in the governor's race, but in the other constitutional offices, and for that matter, even judgeships, based on publicly available information.
Because it's so much
So,
to wade through and to try to
yes.
organize for yourself.
Right.
Yeah, I think though, Madam Chair, for the purposes of our conversation tonight, if you go into whatever AI system that you're using and just plug in the question of what is Steve Hilton's position on homelessness as a candidate for governor in the state of California,
Sure.
it's going to spit out a lot of information. Ask Siri. Go straight to AI there, and will produce a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
So the way in which we can easily do this research is literally uh, at our fingertips. So what Kim has put forth is very impressive, like what's being displayed here and now. But any range of questions can be posed, and AI will spit back quite a lot, uh, and it's often in digestible form.
Sure.
Pose that question, they'll give some information. You'll be more educated than you were in the space of just a few minutes or less.
It's amazing. And we could just pop any name. Wait, what happened? I could pop any name in that question box.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you said, so I'm
Right.
sitting here looking at the agenda, and the topic of the agenda says understanding housing affordability on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I just copied and pasted it. I don't know. That's a big question.
Right.
And this is what it came up with was, okay, where to governor?
Right.
Wait, is that the one? So this gives us kind of an overview, and it also pulled from the data, the Emerson data that Vincent was, I think it was Vincent was talking about earlier.
Right.
And then
But
as
there
I
it is.
listened, the
It gave
question
everybody stuff.
became,
Yeah.
yep,
And
somebody was asking, and I'm a bad speller, but Claude figured it out. Create an infographic to compare recidivism of the issues of incarceration versus homelessness. How do these compare side by side? And look at all this interesting information.
Yeah.
And then it answered the question in a way I didn't mean to ask it, but it actually gave me some really good thinking to do for how to reword the question. And this link, I shared it in the chat. So you can, I'm going fast, but you can linger where you'd like to linger.
Sure.
And I said, okay, well, let me ask the question again. Now, compare the return of incarcerated people to prison after release to the return of homeless people to the street or temporary housing after gaining housing through support services. And I think that's might have been how the question was intended, what it was intended to ask. So it looks like there's a much lower recidivism rate to homelessness than there is to incarceration. Maybe at first glance, right? We start looking closer at what these conclusions are based on. We get a little more granular. And then it does give you some conclusions, right? Key variables.
You have to be able to tease out the source material here.
Yeah,
as
for
well.
sure. And you can see some wonky sources. I saw some in here. It was like op-eds. I don't know what PubMed Central is, USA Facts, like who knows? But we
Council
can
on Criminal
check.
Justice, the Urban Institute. Yeah.
And then we're talking about how difficult it is to solve homelessness and what it's gonna take. So I just said, okay, Claude, maybe you know. How do we solve this? Based on historical approaches in California, specifically, since we are the lab, we are the epicenter, as we heard earlier. What will it take to solve homelessness in Los Angeles today? Consider policy funding, social services, voting, etc. And it basically just went through a timeline. This is what we've tried already. A nice timeline year by year. Some of that policy is mentioned here. What failed, what works. This is what the 5 pillars, what solving it is going to actually require. And you can see, oh, okay, never mind. And then again, we get more granular, the crisis within the crisis. Does the funding picture look like? And then ultimately, this is what we here want to know tonight anyway, is what voters and residents can do at the ballot box in tiny little print. What are we looking for when we vote? Who is supporting housing bond and sales tax measures with strong accountability clauses? Who's going to vote for governors, supervisors, city council members with specific housing production plans, et cetera, et cetera? In the community, these are the things we need to do. So it gives us a nice bottom line, which I think this is a quote from Empowerment Congress already. But it's what you spoke of earlier, essentially heart, right?
Yeah.
A problem of political will.
I think it's really great to consider how this can be a useful tool as we, dig into our ballots and want to understand the various measures and candidates. And really, of course, my bias is homelessness, but I think because homelessness is not explicitly on the ballot, this is also an opportunity to understand the intersectionality of so many issues and so many things that we are voting on in these upcoming elections. So, Kim, thank you so much for sharing this. These graphics are really cool too.
You're welcome. I made them myself, not really.
Nice.
So
thank you to your assistant, Claude, too.
This last one. Yes, thank you, Claude. Maybe I can copy this one, but you have the whole chat in there.
Thank you.
If anybody else, I'm stopping now, would like to take a closer look.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I hope.
Nice.
Thank you. I hope this has been, for me, this has been a very engaging meeting. We've learned so much about different perspectives of different aspects of this election, of what is on our ballots, and hopefully how homelessness is on our ballots. So I would like to take an opportunity to say thank you to everybody who supported this evening's meeting, from supervisor to Mr. Harris to Kim to Dr. Pickens. So thank you so much. We hope this has been, helpful in supporting your election readiness. And I would like to share that this is part 2 of 3 of our Empowerment Congress Election Ready series. The final part will be this Tuesday, excuse me, May 19th at 6:30 p.m. Mr. Harris, is that right? May I invite you to share about the GROG meeting, and then perhaps we can open it up for any questions from this evening's meeting, and then wrap up?
Yes, first let me apologize. That was me coughing. I was taking a sip of water and it went down the wrong pipe. And so I had to run away. Um, our next meeting is Tuesday, May the 19th. It is at 6 o'clock p.m. It's the Government Reform and Accountability Working Group meeting. We expect to have a lengthier conversation about county measure ER during the meeting. We will also return and take a look at the final tracking survey that Eviderus anticipates doing, which will be made public on Monday, May 18th. So the information will be relatively fresh. We are seeking to line up a representative from Eviderus to go over the data. We anticipate that they may also be able to share some data about county measure ER, that's the half-cent sales tax. So those are the things that are on our agenda. We will probably also go through what you should do if you're planning on mailing your ballot, by when, where you can return it, where the vote centers are located, and so forth, or at least how you can locate them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And while we're both here, does anybody have any questions? We have about 3 minutes, and we would like to make sure we open up some time for questions.
I'd just like to say, one, great meeting today. Two, apologize for me being in the witness protection program today. It's not appropriate. Sir Vincent, I don't see Dr. Seth here, but I sent you both an email to just have a sidebar regarding the assertment that we make, and that assertment we make is unhoused is a better indicator versus homeless. I'll close with this. In our opinion, homeless is directly related to mental health and substance abuse, and houseless is directly related to economics. I'm done speaking. Bam.
Thank you. I don't know that you get any disagreement from me.
Concur. Thank you. Any other questions?
I guess I would ask, in campaigns, city campaigns, how successful is a candidate that you have to write in when they're being elected? How successful has that been in the past? How do you go about campaigning in that way?
The only successful write-in candidate in a significant election, certainly one that has garnered uh, substantial publicity, was when uh, Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski wrote in. Some may recall, I believe she was primaried by a MAGA person on the uh, to her political right, and didn't receive the Republican nomination as the incumbent, and so ran a write-in campaign in Alaska and won. Alaska is unique. Remember, its population uh, might be what, 700,000 or 800,000 people. So the ability to run a write-in campaign is arguably dictated in large part by the size of the electorate and the ability to uh, educate the mass of voters required in order to get one elected. She may have had more of a challenge than most because I believe Alaska required that her last name be spelled, or the write-in, the name on the write-in be spelled exactly. And Murkowski is not probably the easiest uh, name to write from memory. So that's the only one about which I'm aware. As to the question about uh, ease or difficulty, I would suspect that it is significantly difficult. I'm also aware that in, I think, the last legislative cycle, the legislature made write-in candidacies more challenging. Um, I think there has to be some sort of certification of the write-in candidate by election administrators before the write-in uh, candidate will be, uh, before the ballots will be considered. You can you can Google that to make sure that I am completely accurate, but I believe that's the case. I did look that up myself a while ago.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, and thank you so much for that response, Mr. Harris. I think that is our last question for the evening. I want to say thank you again to all of our speakers and our AI expert demonstration. So we hope you'll join us at our the final part of the Empowerment Congress Election Ready series on this Tuesday, May 19th at 6 p.m. with the Government Reform and Accountability Working Group, and then back here for our Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group on Thursday, May 28th. So thank you so much, everyone, and we hope you have